Hey there, folks. Baylor here, and today we're talking stats. I'm going to break down the data from my Slay the Spire gameplay in 2022, whereupon I set myself on a challenge to slay the Spire 400 times, 100 times with each of the 4 characters, going for a win against the final boss, the Heart, on Ascension 20 each time. Overall, the challenge was a huge success. Let's take a look at the overall breakdown here. In 2022, we had 402 wins, 265 defeats, for an overall 60.27% overall success rate. Because we only rotated on a win, that means that Silent and Defect ended up overrepresented in the sample. They have more total runs because they have more losing runs, but the same number of winning runs as the characters that were more successful. This brings down the overall rotating success rate a little bit compared to what it would be if all 4 characters were weighted equally, but is still a number I'm exceedingly proud of. My personal goal for the year was to just do better than 50-50. And the fact that we ended up 60-40 is just way, way better than that. We could have lost 100 more times and still been better than 50-50, which is just a truly incredible thing to me. So I feel extremely good overall. During this year, there was a 20 streak of victories, which currently still stands as the record for most consecutive Ascension 20 Heart victories that anyone has done. And I do really attribute that occurrence to my improvement over the year. That did occur late in the year, around September, I want to say. And I really think that the prior months of working really helped with that. 100 more losses might have caused the challenge to fail. This challenge was victorious with a couple of weeks to spare in the year. But I think I could have pushed myself a lot more and played a lot more if necessary. Another thing to point out is that losses do take less time than wins do. Biggest losing streak, I think, was 7 losses in a row on the Silent. Off the top of my head. That's a good one. I don't think we have that represented in here. 7 or 8. So let's look at individual characters here, with the Ironclad up first. Each character really had a different experience this year. And I want to talk about each of them really individually, because they are truly different experiences, and the data really shows that, actually. Ironclad had a really good success rate overall. 2/3 win rate, 151 runs, 100 wins, 51 losses. We had more success rate overall with boss swap, 36 boss swaps, of which 27 won, for a 75% overall success rate when swapping our starter relic. This flies in the face of conventional wisdom, which says that the starter relic of the Ironclad is one of the best, healing for a tremendous amount of health each run, and really allowing the Ironclad to take advantage of the incremental gains. But it turns out having an extra boss relic can be really advantageous, so that does make me want to consider swapping the boss relic a bit more often in this year's gameplay. Try to get more successes that way. Overall, I'm really, really happy with how I played Ironclad in 2022. I think I'll cover my overall thoughts on the character a little bit later once we've looked at some of the more detailed bits. So we're just going to look at the individual classes first here. So Silent's up next. Silent had a 54% overall success rate, much less. I think she was almost tied for worst performing character here, along with the Defect. 100 wins, 86 losses, and did about the same when we swapped our boss relic, which was not that often. Only 32 runs swapped the boss relic, one in 6 runs approximately. Silent proved to me quite difficult this year. I've seen a few other players do quite a bit better than 50-50 with the character, but I also feel like I learned how to more consistently reach the end game of Spire with Silent, as well as expand my library of ways to win. Like, we really kind of figured out how to get phantasmal killer victories with like Sneaky Strike, how to use Draw Discard a bit more effectively. What I think I could be doing better on this character is successfully incorporating draw and discard engines, picking acrobatics and prepared at the correct times to properly leverage them rather than trying to pick them up and dying. And overall, I think I could be having success with keeping my deck size smaller overall on this character. That's our silent overview, just at a minimum here. Defect had 193 total runs, 101 wins, 92 losses for a total of 51% win rate. Slight improvement seen with boss swap. We swapped the starter relic a lot more on the Defect, as I did view it as the better choice a lot of the time, and the numbers say a slight improvement, but only a slight improvement. It feels like it didn't make as much of a difference as I would have expected. True, a 4% win rate is something not to sleep on necessarily, a 4% increase, but at the same time, 4% increase could easily be within margin of error here. I don't think there's enough runs in this sample to necessarily definitively say that boss swap is more likely to win than baseline based on this. I'd have to do some like P analysis or whatever, but I think that could be within your error bar. Slight gap on my part. I'm actually missing the Watcher overview here, but I will be back to that when we take a more detailed look at the Watcher. So I do have a Watcher overview slide. Let's take a look at cause of death for each of these characters. Here's a really delightful graphic made by A20 Grieve, one of our community members. How did Baalorlord die in 2022? We've got a chart here showing top causes of death broken up by color for the characters. So purple for Watcher, green for Silent, red for Ironclad, and blue for Defect. I like to look at the loss aspect first here. What caused the defeats of 2022? And of course, to probably no surprise, the top answer is the Gremlin Knob with a whopping 20 kills. Managed to get every character, but overwhelmingly the Silent and the Defect, 7 and 8 deaths respectively, whereas only 2 and 3 deaths for Watcher and Ironclad. Remember that the Silent and the Defect have much more total deaths than the other characters, so they end up killed by certain enemies much more quickly. Other big threats here are the Act 1 bosses, Time Eater, Hexaghost, and a little bit, Hexaghost, Slime Boss, and a little bit further down, the Guardian. All picked up a lot of kills. Notably, every character died to Hexaghost almost an equal number of times. Every character died to Guardian at least once. Slime Boss got a lot of kills in total, but overwhelmingly those kills were on the Silent. And notably, none of those kills occurred on Watcher. So the adage of Slime Boss is free for Watcher held true, and that Slime Boss is the most threatening Act 1 boss for Silent also held true. These are things we've said a lot on stream, but it's cool to see those actually reflected in the numbers. Slime Boss really does kill Silent more than any other Act 1 boss, and Watcher really does take the least amount of threat from Slime Boss compared to the Act 1 bosses. And the same is true of Shield and Spear. Yes, Watcher never died to Shield and Spear, and that makes sense to me because Watcher has a lot of ability to do burst damage, and that's really what the Shield and Spear fight is checking, is your ability to do lots and lots of damage up front. Other things of note, overall, you'll see a lot of Act 1 represented here. That's because every character has to get through Act 1 in order to proceed to the other causes of death. I think, and yeah, this one is excluding Heart also, just to be clear, which was, I believe, the top source of death for all characters. We'll see more numbers on that in a moment. Nemesis, Repto, Lagavulin, Donideka, Automaton. So Spire Growth and Shell Parasite and Fungi are actually the only non-elite, non-boss combats to show up on this slide, which tells us that the overwhelming causes of death are the bosses and elites. I'm very, very rarely dying to regular fights, but regular fights are really more about costing you a resource that can then cause a death in those boss or elite fights. Shelled Parasite and Fungi causing a death on every character is not surprising to me. I think that does cement that as the most threatening of all the basic fights in the game. That avocado and the rat with the double threat of frail and vulnerable and just threatening you for so much damage on turn 1. It's really hard to deal with. I'm also happy to see Slavers as one of the top threats here. The 3 Slavers elite of Act 2 also racked up kills on every character, really proving themselves one of the most threatening encounters on A20. Interesting that the other elites of Act 2, Book of Stabbing and Gremlin Leader, got a lot of kills, but those kills were overwhelmingly on the Defect. 6 kills for Book of Stabbing, 5 kills for Gremlin Leader. Defect really does struggle by the numbers against the elites of Act 2, oddly enough, least so against the 3 Slavers. We'll have to take a bit more look at the Defect's combat numbers. We do have separate analysis for each of the characters here coming up. But what an interesting little chart of cause of death here. It's just showing to me that even the threats that we're by and large preparing for are causing a lot of problems. Something that I suspect that I'm not considering often enough, though, is the Time Eater. Time Eater is rarely a threat that I'm mentally and deck-wise preparing for deliberately ahead of time with my picks, and maybe that's something to incorporate a little bit more. I'm personally not surprised to see sentries racking up more kills than Lagavulin. Lagavulin actually got very few kills directly, but that doesn't mean Lagavulin wasn't a threat. More on that in a minute. Heart was excluded from this graph because it would make everything else look small by comparison. It was the top cause of death by far. So let's actually look at combats in more detail here. By character, I have a breakdown of the number of deaths and the total damage caused by each combat. So here's the combats for the Ironclad. We can actually see the damage total and number of deaths. So damage-wise, Heart did more than twice as much damage to Ironclad as anything else did, and caused more than twice as many deaths. Definitely shows that it is the true final boss. I think when it comes to specifically damage numbers, you'll see that the Ironclad has more damage taken in late game fights because of runs where Ironclad gets hundreds of max health and then face tanks everything in the late game. But if you were thinking Lagavulin wasn't a threat, look at this here. Lagavulin was actually the 4th most source of damage for the Ironclad, causing over 2,000 damage across all my runs, but we had no deaths. We just constantly face tanked like 30 or 40 damage to Lagavulin and then maybe died to something else, but Lagavulin never actually killed the Ironclad directly. But still, of the 3 elites, they actually caused more than the sentries and more damage than Gremlin Knob to Ironclad by quite a bit. Likewise, Reptomancer, Donu Ndeka, and Time Eater really topping the damage charts, but no kills to their names. The lowest total damage fight that caused a death was the Gremlin Gang, 364. The highest damage causing regular combat was what? The 3 Darklings, that's not surprising either, with 1,105 for Ironclad. So that's the damage breakdown for Clad, and that also kind of helps give another perspective on what the top threats are. And consistently we see the bosses, specifically the end game Gauntlet, the Act 3 bosses, the Heart and the Shield and Spear are the most threatening part of the game by far. And then Act 2 and the Act 1 elites and bosses tend to also be quite threatening. So let's take a deeper look into Ironclad. What else did Ironclad experience in 2022? Looking at cards now for Ironclad. What cards do we have most and what cards do we have least? So in terms of Ironclad cards, this is checking the number of copies of the card that occurred in winning runs. So we have, of course, Defend is the most appearing card because many runs win with 4 defends. But then we had 159 Shrug-It-Offs, 106 Feel No Pains, 105 Strikes, and 100 Dark Embraces. Basically, this is a list of Baylor's favorite cards on Ironclad. You can really see what I'm deliberately picking the most. Meanwhile, my least favorite cards, Clash, Rampage, Wild Strike, fire breathing. Actually, kind of odd to see hemokinesis so far down, but I think the next ones that you see really low, Hemo, Searing Blow, Combust, these are uncommons that'll only pick in Act 1, so they appear very rarely. Meanwhile, the most commonly seen cards are the utility cards, the glue cards, the block and draw strategy of Shrug, Feel No Pain, Dark Embrace, True Grit, and Pummel Strike. You can see I really value card draw here. Lots of Burning Pacts, too. And lots of Battle Trances. Very neat. Very neat. So this is total number of cards. So that means more copies of cards equals more picks here by this. So if I have 2 Dark Embraces in one run, then that counts as +2 for the Dark Embrace number on this screen. And I think this is total number of cards in the deck at the end, including... Oh, just for winning runs. That's good to know, actually. Only includes winning runs, yes. Good clarification there. Another thing I can look at for Ironclad is the first upgrade. This one's a little confusing to look at, but this is how often I won or lost based on what card I chose to upgrade first. The more green, the more likely I was to win, with that being my first upgrade. And the more red, the less likely I am to win, with that being my first upgrade. So the winners here are Whirlwind, Carnage, Uppercut, Inflame, Hand of Greed, actually all green, 100% win rate. 100% win rate on True Grit is the first upgrade, too. That's interesting. What circumstances that points to? What runs where am I upgrading True Grit in? And then Searing Blow, +1. That's funny. I like that Searing Blow +1 is separately categorized from Searing Blow. But it looks like in runs where I went Searing Blow, I had a 75% win rate. That's pretty entertaining. But what this shows me at a glance is that I am more likely to win if I get a really good damage card early. Whirlwind, Carnage, Uppercut, Inflame, Hand of Greed. And I'm much less likely to win in situations where I'm Desperation picking Hemokinesis or Clothesline or Thunderclap and then upgrading them. That's kind of interesting. Also like this entry for no upgrades, showing that I'm highly likely to lose if my run never got to upgrade a card. No figure. Go figure. Really? You don't say. You don't say. All right, what about the win rate of cards? So this is another one from Acot Grieve. We'll be having a similar graph for each of the 4 characters here. Ironclad by percentage of wins or defeats with that card of the deck. So this one is this kind of analysis on cards, I think, is a really good insight into sampling bias. This one, the winning cards here are cards that I'll only pick in situations where I'm already overwhelmingly winning the run. So they're special situation use or utility cards. Entrench, Dual Wield, Body Slam, Seeing Red. These are cards I say don't take initially, but once you have the other synergies in place, do take. Double Tap, Sentinel, or broad use stuff like Master of Strategy. Interesting to see Demon Form, actually the highest performing power here, better than Corruption by a few percentage points. And I don't even think Barricade is on this screen. But yeah, look at that Perfected Strike. Hold on, it's very interesting to see Perfected Strike do so well. I'm wondering if that's counting the one Perfected Strike run that we had, because there was one particular run I'm thinking of that might affect the Ironclad stats specifically. And yeah, some of these have much smaller sample sizes. Specifically, this analysis did exclude any card that didn't show up at least 5 times. So there must be at least 5 occurrences of the card. But I don't think it actually has a more detailed look than that. This is also one of the analysis types that is quite customizable. There is a public web page for this one. You can actually I'll include the link to this in the video description of this video, but you can open up the win percentage for each of these cards in your own browser and filter for specific cards if you want. Yeah, less showing about how good the card is necessarily, but more how good we are at deciding whether to pick it. Yeah, how likely do we pick a card and then have it actually be the tool that we needed? This can help you identify the cards that are broadly powerful, but they're not going to be the ones that are at the very top, and that's quite interesting here. What about the worst performing cards on the Ironclad? Let's take a look at these. There's a few outliers here too, including ones you wouldn't think. Look at that. Berserk, 100% success rate. Panic Button, 100% success rate. But some of our worst performing cards, Combust, Hemokinesis, Bludgeon, not surprising that Bludgeon doesn't perform well, it's just too expensive. Thunderclap, Sever Soul, Dropkick, Cleave, Chrysalis, Brutality, Reckless Charge are some of the worst performers by the numbers there. But I agree, the best performers will be the win more cards, the cards that we only pick when we think we're already doing well. Would Bludgeon be getting removed from winning decks? I don't think so. When we have a Bludgeon, we usually keep it. I don't know why I would get rid of a Bludgeon. But overall, this tells me that the cards that I generally consider not that good are, for the most part, in alignment with how they're performing. A couple things to note, though. Cards that are doing better than I would have expected. Ghostly Armor seems to have a very high success rate. Let's look back at the winning ones again. Heavy Blade performed quite well, although I don't pick Heavy Blade very often. That's probably why. Very good success rate for Bloodletting. I'm not surprised to see that. Havoc. That's another one that I pick very, very rarely, but to see a high success rate mostly means that I'm only picking it when I really think I should be. But yeah, try not to see this as conclusions about what's best or worst, especially since it applies to specifically my play. It's more, again, yeah, like how good am I at appropriately picking each of these cards is, I think, the number that you're really seeing when you look at these ones. So those are the numbers for Clad. Let's take a look at the next character here. Just skip over this real quick. The Silent is the next character. So here's our breakdown for Silent combats. Heart was, again, overwhelmingly, by a factor of 2, the most common source of death and damage. 4,000 total damage, 17 deaths. No, that's actually less damage than Ironclad took, but way more deaths. And then Time Eater was second for deaths, and Gremlin Leader was third. But once again, Lagavulin topping the charts for damage dealt, even if not for kills. Once again, the primary sources of damage really do seem to be the Endgame Gauntlet and the Act 1 Elites more than anything else. How fascinating that is. I think that's likely to be because we are in Act 1 very consistently trying to use Act 1 Elites as a way to trade our health away in order to get stronger with the money and the relics. It also explains the frequent deaths to them. Other significant sources of damage. 888 damage from Slime Boss. How appropriate. Middling results from the Act 2 bosses. Really not a lot of damage from regular combats. I think that's the Ring of the Snake speaking. The fact that the Silent draws 2 additional cards on turn 1. You really don't see a lot of damage dealt by any regular fight here. We know we died to Shelled Parasite plus 1. Oh yeah, the top 20 and the bottom 20. So Shelled Parasite plus 1 must have done very little. Most hilarious to me, 1 damage taken to the Mind Bloom boss in the entirety of 2022. Now that's funny. That's funny. Poor Jawworm didn't make the list. Not make the list. And 69 damage to the Colosseum Knobs. Very nice. So, what are our favorite and least favorite Silent cards? Unsurprisingly, Defend is the most frequently seen card in Silent winning decks, but also then Acrobatics, Backflap, Piercing Wail, the draw and defense cores, Calculated Gamble, Survive or Neutralize, Blade Dance was the most common damage common, Footwork, Well-Laid Plans, Prepared. I must be taking a lot of copies of Prepared. Adrenaline, Dagger Throw, and Terror. Meanwhile, our least favorite cards included Unload, Distraction, Riddle with Holes, Heel Hook, Masterful Stab, and Storm of Steel. I think we could maybe take a few more Storm of Steels, but overall I'm pretty happy with those list of least favorite cards on Silent. Those include the damage cards that really don't do as much damage as some of the others. For example, Riddle with Holes, for 2 energy, barely does the same damage as Blade Dance, and for 1 energy, and it can't be boosted by accuracy, unlike the Blade Dance. I think we took quite a few accuracies this year. Given how many Blade Dances I had, I guarantee there were a lot of accuracies as well. But yeah, not a lot of copies of Bane. And maybe that's something that we should have taken more, actually. I think our Poison decks really didn't do all that well on the Silent. Let's look at that. Let's look at the win rate by card. Let's see how the Poison cards did. So, actually, no, first upgrade is the next thing that we're looking at. So, how well did we do based on what the first card I upgraded was? Once again, we see a high success if I acquired a unusual damage card and was able to upgrade that first. Very notably, 100% success rate if my first upgrade was Glass Knife. A very high success rate with Skewer, with Blade Dance, with All Attack, with Flechettes. Perform pretty badly with Dagger Spray, though, and I think that's a sign of desperation, right? If my first upgrade is Dagger Spray, it's a sign I didn't get one of those better cards that have the higher success rate. Note, and let's see, and speaking of poison cards, if my first upgrade was Bane, we did very badly. If my first upgrade was Bouncing Flask, we did very badly. If my first upgrade was Deadly Poison, we actually had pretty good odds. But Crippling Cloud didn't do very well. Once again, no upgrades didn't do very well. Sadistic Nature didn't do very well. And Poison Stab didn't do very well. So other than Deadly Poison, which might be an outlier, if I upgraded a Poison card in Act 1, it was not likely to be a successful run, whereas if I upgraded a direct damage card, it was much more likely to be a successful run. Very rarely did I choose to upgrade any form of block card, and usually that didn't go all that well when I did. Lots of little one-offs there, too. Why V2 for Wraithform? That's using the internal reference code of the card. In the case of Wraithform, it's because Wraithform, the card as it is in Slay the Spire today, is the revision of the card. It was originally a totally different power, and when it was changed, it was done so by adding a completely new card with the same name, hence Wraithform V2. Fun facts for you. All right, Silent win rate by card. What were our top cards on Silent? Panic Button. Go figure. I keep talking about Panic Button as one of the better silent, colorless cards, and I think that's good proof of it. But then again, the really conditional stuff, Tactician, Grand Finale, Panache, Reflex, Concentrate, Discovery, Tools of the Trade, really. Phantasmal Killer is pretty high up there. Accuracy, Blur, Prepared all did pretty well too. How fascinating. So if I had a draw, discard heavy deck with lots of physical damage, it seemed like it was going to go very well. Note the card Venomology there. That actually means Alchemize. That's another internal game reference name. And another card that's been redesigned. So where it says Venomology halfway down, that means Alchemize. Likewise, Underhanded Strike at the very bottom is Sneaky Strike. Just a few corrections there. Not a single poison card on the top performing page. Meanwhile, if we look at the worst silent cards, we see, a lot of red here. Cards that did worse than 50-50 included Endless Agony, Noxious Fumes, Dagger Spray, Predator, Deadly Poison, Poison Stab, Unload, Masterful Stab, Bane, Choke, Quick Slash. Oof, look at Quick Slash with a meager 25% win rate. And then Sadistic Nature was real bad. We did not do very well when we picked Sadistic Nature on Silent, as much as I like to think of that as a silent card. Meanwhile, Secret Technique as an outlier there with 100% victory rate. Beautiful. I like where we stuck the outliers. So I think that the overall picture I get here is that Poison does not perform by the numbers the way that I want it to. And we seem to have a lot more success in decks that are physical damage dependent, especially ones that pick up Blade Dance, Terror, Phantasmal Killer, and then a lot of card draw. Or if we figure out how to get Grand Finale to work, we're also very likely to succeed. Very cool, very cool. So those are the numbers on Silent. Overall, these are actually really helpful numbers for me. These tell me that I should probably be picking Prepared in Act 1 a little bit more. Definitely keep it up with backflips and acrobatics. If I was going to point to one card that my opinion has improved on in 2022, it's definitely backflip. Just the power of card draw really is something you can't underestimate. Is that because there's more draw discard synergies for physical damage? That might be. It's definitely easier to get your attack and block to work simultaneously when you have a draw discard engine. Where is Catalyst? We actually don't see it. It must be in the middle range, not one of the best nor one of the worst. Note that we're not displaying every single card's win rate here. Zeknar says the ideal Silent run is leveraging physical damage to get you to Act 3 and then converting into poison. I would also say converting into Thorns damage can work too, as long as you, although that works a lot less effectively against the Act 3 bosses. You have to be able to get through those. But Thorns or Poison are both very good for Heart. All right, how about the numbers on the Defect here? Let's take a... So we're halfway done with the classes here, looking at the kind of individual character data. Defect was 101 wins, 92 losses for a 52% overall win rate. Our causes of damage and death for Defect were the Heart with 4767 total damage, 23 deaths. Unlike the other characters, Heart actually tripled the kill count of everything else. Just absolutely destroying Defect over and over and over again. Unsurprising. What is surprising is actually how frequently I got past Shield and Spear, and I gotta say I'm very proud of this. 2,000 damage taken to them, but only 2 deaths. I have to imagine many of the deaths attributed to Heart were probably because we took unacceptable damage to Shield and Spear, looking at the numbers here. But Shield and Spear are a really, really big threat to the Defect, who very much struggles to get past such a heavy front-loaded fight. And so I'm pretty happy that we didn't die to them very much. Other top threats for the Defect, basically any multi-enemy fight or any fight that requires you to do a lot of damage quickly. The Defect is not that good at, so elites top the scales for sure here. Gremlin Knob, 3 Sentries, Book of Stabbing. Again, Lagavulin topping the damage charts, but no kills. Very interesting experience Lagavulin had this year. 3 Slavers doing a lot of damage. Donu and Deka doing a lot of damage. Reptomancer doing a lot of damage. Meanwhile, we took only 43 damage to the Mind Bloom boss. And one time, oh, I remember this. We died to 3 lice one time. I remember that now. We also died to the Mushroom Lair. We died to the 3 mushrooms one time with only 57 total damage this year. Couple outlier deaths there. But yeah, if I remember correctly, that 3 louse kill and the fact that Lagavulin has a lot of damage and 0 kills are directly related to one another. That's what my memory of the event is. Yeah, no double orb walkers here. I think the reason for that is because double orb walkers are a fight you can decline. And so I don't... If they're going to kill me or do a lot of damage, I don't fight them usually. We did have 1 or 2 deaths to them this year, though. Curious which character that was on. Yeah, dying to the Mushroom Lair when you immediately got offered a heal. Talk about overconfidence. You could definitely have a bad draw order in that fight, for sure. So, our favorite and least favorite Defect cards. Again, Defend topping the list of most frequently seen. Also, tons of holograms and cool-headeds. Tons of defragments. Compile drivers, skims, seeks, turbos, echo forms. Wow, 67 copies of a rare card. Wow. 68 of Seek. Seek and Echo Form, by far my favorite Defect rares, but also 63 Bias Cognition. Meanwhile, we only took 4 Hello Worlds, 7 Thunderstrikes. I took 7 Thunderstrikes and 7 Blizzards. How appropriate. 9 Melters, 11 Bullseyes. I don't think Melter deserves to be all the way down there. I think Melter is better than Scrape. So, Melter, why are you so much lower than Scrape? That's my question. And where's the Claw? Not here, that's for sure. Are transforms considered picks? Yes, as long as the card got into my deck, it counts. So there must be also some excluded here, right? Because you'd expect 101 copies of Ascender's Bane because we had 101 winning Defect runs, but we don't see that. But yeah, Strike didn't even make the top 15 on the Defect. And I imagine Defend won't make the top 15 on the Silent. So, Defect card win rates. What do we got here? Interesting. Now, that I'm not surprised to see, but I'm very thrilled to see it. Top of the chart, Static Discharge for Defect. And then again, the really conditional stuff. Fusion, Force Field, Stack? Steam Power. That must mean heat sinks. Meteor Strike is also very high up there. Reprogram very high up there. Multicast. Storm, also seeing high success rates. Some of these are good cards. Some of these are cards that I think I'm just good at recognizing when they're good. Storm especially, like with Mummified Hand or with Frozen Egg seems better. Echo Form just had a broadly good success rate. We took it so much. I'd actually like to see a version of this chart where the success rate is also weighted by the pick rate. So some sort of weighted, like how often do you pick it versus how often does it win to create some sort of like aggregate score. How about the worst Defect cards? Steam Power is Overclock. Got it. Not Heat Sinks. Overclock, excuse me. So Overclock had a high success rate, and that also doesn't surprise me because that's a very conditional card, as before. What about the worst Defect cards? Rip and Tear performed very poorly. Probably because I was taking it in desperation slots. The more I take Rip and Tear, the less I like it, actually, because the fights where you need front-loaded physical damage are not fights where you can tolerate that physical damage being randomly targeted. And so Rip and Tear does not perform because you can't make it hit the right gremlin, for example. Meanwhile, Doom and Gloom seeing a very, very solid success rate. But not great with Cold Snaps, not great with Streamlines, or Sweeping Beams, or Melters. Poor Rainbow didn't perform very well. I still think Rainbow is a good card, but it's definitely not a strong performer sometimes. Sunder being so far down is kind of surprising, but also to me points to just a card that I take a lot and therefore ends up losing a lot because there are many runs where the Defect grabs one Sunder and then it isn't enough and we die. That's my guess on a lot of these. Gash. Gash is Claw, by the way. So Claw performing at a 52% overall win rate. That's actually not that bad, all things considered. That's about average for Defect. Slightly positive, they say. Very good. Very good. All right, and the first upgrade for Defect, I actually did put this in the slightly wrong order, but that's okay. So, talking about Sunder, actually, we also saw that if my first upgrade was Sunder, I didn't tend to survive that often. That's also true for Streamline, Beam Cell, Sweeping Beam, Go for the Eyes, Barrage, and a few other attack cards. Meanwhile, I had pretty good success rates with first upgrade on Doom and Gloom, especially Doom and Gloom, Hyper Beam, Ball Lightning, Cool-Headed. Bias Cognition was a very high success rate too. Yeah, if I got a Bias Cognition Act 1, I always won. No surprise there. So again, to me, this sometimes points to a correlation between early game card quality and win rate. If I get very powerful or broad solution cards like Hyper Beam or Doom and Gloom, we tend to do very well. My first upgrade is Defragment. We tend to do very well. Again, no surprise. You see a Defragment, take a Defragment, applies on Defect, and it seems like it's an effective strategy based on that number. Interesting to see such high performance for first card Darkness as well. First upgrade Darkness, rather. That's a key distinction there. Not first card, but first upgrade. So those are the numbers for Defect. Next up, the last character to look at individually here, the Watcher. Watcher had the highest win rate overall with a 74% win rate, which did not budge for our boss swap runs. We saw a pretty much identical performance, whether or not I swapped for the starting relic. So only 36 losses with 101 wins on Watcher. We did lose plenty. I don't think I played Watcher anywhere near perfectly in 2022, but I played in ways that I felt were pretty entertaining to us. So again, the top damage dealer was the Heart. We actually had to exclude a data point on this one, because otherwise the Heart would have done over 100,000 damage to us because of the credit from one instance of playing Blasphemy and surviving that then went on to be a winning run. So we had to exclude that. But still caused by a far, again, more than anything else, 3,000 damage, 10 deaths. So again, just topping the charts decisively. The Heart really is the toughest thing in the Spire by far. Other sources of death were the Act 3 bosses. All three of them got a kill. Donu Deka, Awaken 1, and Time Eater. Early elites also got kills. The 3 sentries, notably doing more damage than Gremlin Knob very consistently. With Lagavulin actually being at the bottom. I think that's because those setup turns are so useful for Watcher. Lagavulin sleeps for 3 turns, and Watcher can usually use this to bank some energy or retain some cards or scry something. The Blasphemy Death did not win. Oh, I survived it and then died. Good clarification there. Well, heck. Well, heck. Meanwhile, bottom cause of damage, the Lagavulin Dead Adventurer, which we fought one time and took 9 damage, I guess. Other low sources of damage, Transient, one of the least threatening things to the Watcher. Gremlin Gang also causing very little damage. Big Slime is unsurprising to see so far down there, kind of like Slime Boss, which didn't even make the top 20 for Watcher. Amazing. It would be nice to know how often Act 3 boss stats were from the first to the second boss. Ooh, yeah. I actually have no idea. Very interesting. All right, let's look at Watcher cards by the number. What are Baalor's favorite cards on the Watcher? The ones I take the most often. Cut Through Fate is our #1 card of all of them, appearing more than Defend, more than Strike, more than Vigilance, more than Eruption. It's Cut Through Fate. It's the card I'm most likely to get multiple copies of, and I'm most likely to pick up. That makes sense to me. Damage plus Scry plus Straw is just a really, really efficient, effective, useful card. And as a common, you see it a lot. Third Eye also being very high up because I value Scry a whole lot. Meanwhile, the uncommons that we take a lot, unsurprisingly, Rushdown, Talk to the Hand, Mental Fortress, Wallop, Meditate, and Fear No Evil. And the most taken rares, of course, Vault and Scrawl. Again, no surprise there. Least favorite on Watcher is more interesting to me. Wreath of Flame, Windmill Strike, Perseverance. I really don't like either Windmill Strike or Perseverance. Both cards that scale from being retained, because you just don't get enough turns on A20 to make them work. Alpha, Signature Move, and Collect, also unsurprising to see so far down. Quite frankly, I'm surprised I took Collect 5 times. Maybe it was from Transforms or something. We had a couple fun runs involving Conjure Blade, but overall I didn't take it much. Don't take most Watcher rares very often. But yeah, very unsurprising to see Windmill Strike at the very bottom. Still not a card I think is useless. There's definitely take situations for Windmill Strike. But that's how often I picked them. How often do they actually win? This one's a little difficult to sort out because Watcher's base win rate is so high. It can be a little difficult to differentiate the successful from the unsuccessful. Clear the Mind, I think that's Empty Mind, the internal reference for that card. So Empty Mind, our top performing card. That's quite interesting. Not surprising. Stance change and draw really is a lot of control over what's happening in the fight. Ragnarok, probably one of those cards I only pick when I'm doing well. I really like how efficient it is. It does tons of damage. Also seeing high success rate with Omniscience, Wave of the Hand, Worship. Worship's another conditional one. But I think it's not a surprise to see Sanctity and Crush Joints just being broadly useful here. Oh no, there's Empty Mind. Let's Clear the Mind. Play the mind is Tranquility. Okay, so that's one of the more conditional ones. We don't take Tranquility very often. But yes, I see Empty Minds down here at 86%. Funny. So Blasphemy was pretty close to the Watcher overall win rate. I didn't take very many Blasphemies. Often find it redundant when I'm offered it. Either I'm already getting Divinity Mantra, or I want Wrath over the Divinity a lot of the times. What about our worst Watcher cards? Which Watcher cards should I be avoiding? Path to Victory. Oh yeah, well, a lot of Watcher cards got renamed. I think Path to Victory might be Wish. Adaptation is Rushdown. Wireheading equals Foresight. Oh, Path to Victory is Pressure Points. No, that's not surprising. That's not surprising at all. So I should be avoiding Pressure Points, according to this data. And Signature Move as well, which tends not to work out. Judgment also seems like it hasn't worked out when I've picked it. I have believed in Judgment a lot, but seeing the data here, it does seem that it did not do very well for us. Prey, Like Water, and Spirit Shield also didn't do all that well. These are the sort of more esoteric Watcher cards, more conditional. They either need to be played in a specific order, or you need other cards for them to work really well. I could also look at this data as saying, these are cards that I need to figure out the niche for. I need to figure out better when to take them. I think that's a good way to look at it. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we've looked at the cards from all 4 characters. Let's also look at last thing here, upgrades. Success rate based on the first Watcher upgrade. I think this is a little bit less interesting than the other character upgrade graphs because, surprise, surprise, most of the time I upgrade Eruption first, and most of the time I win when I do that, very close to the Watcher average overall. But other high success first upgrades include Empty Fist, Wheel Kick, Sands of Time, Devotion, and Wallop. Meanwhile, if I never upgrade something, surprise, surprise, I'm very likely to lose once again. Nothing too illuminating here. I think, again, mostly this tells me that if I have a 2 or more cost attack, it might be better to upgrade that before upgrading Eruption. But otherwise, you should probably upgrade Eruption first and then upgrade that other thing next. Yeah, funny to see Apotheosis in the losing pile. We must have chosen Apotheosis from Niao and then lost one time. A classic example of sample size small. Hard to draw conclusions from that. It's really all about what happened in that exact one run. So there's the 4 characters. Let's also take a look at... we didn't talk about the non-class cards that we picked up. And I think there's some funny things in here. What curse and colorless cards did I have the most? Like the earlier card counts, this is counting the total instances of that card in winning runs only. And my favorite here is Ascender's Bane, 403. That's 402 winning runs. And that one Watcher run where I duplicated Ascender's Bane for the extra +1. That's why that's 403. We had 20 Calling Bells, 16 Necronomicons, 8 Parasites, 5 Regrets. We never ended a run with Doubt or Normality. I always diligently removed them. Meanwhile, our most commonly seen colorless cards included Panic Button, Madness, because you can get 2 at once pretty easily, Apparition. We had a bunch of those. Lots of Apotheosises, lots of Bites, Dark Shackles, and Master Strategies. Very unsurprising to see Master of Strat, Dark Shackles, Apotheosis, and Panic Button top the list here. These are colorless cards I tend to consider very, very strong. Whereas unreliable ones, Metamorphosis, Magnetism, Mayhem, Forethought, Sadistic Nature, we had very few in winning runs in particular. Very cool that we got 6 winning Jax runs, by the way. And 17 winning Ritual Daggers. Let's get Magnetic. So 10 bite runs. I usually remove 1 or 2 bites, so probably a few more than that. Okay, so those are the characters and their cards. What about relic win rates? I've got some really delightful visualizations here made by Faley about our win rate with relics across the 4 characters. Check this out. Here's a graph of win rate versus pick rate. for the Ironclad. So the higher up vertically a relic is, the higher percentage chance that we won a run with it. And the further to the right it is, the more times I picked it up. So some of the relics that had 100% win rate on Ironclad included Hand Drill, Busted Crown, Ectoplasm, and Mark of the Bloom, and Runic Cube. Those are relics we never lost with, but we did win with. Oh, thanks to Ori for these visualizations. Excuse me, miscredit there. We'll have a thanks page at the end of the presentation as well. But I think on this page, the kind of overall success rate is the more up and to the right it is, the kind of better quality it is overall. The things at the very top left are statistical exceptions, relics that we only had 1 or 2 times and just never managed to lose with. Things that we don't really have an idea of their true win rate. So I wouldn't say that Busted Crown and Ectoplasm are the best boss relics on Ironclad. That shouldn't be the takeaway from this data. Instead, the relics that are more towards the top right are, boss-wise, are Runic Pyramid, Coffee Dripper, Snekawai, Pandora's Box, the usual top candidates when we look at it that way. That's cool. That's very cool. Things I'm surprised to see on this graph include Necronomicon being below baseline for Ironclad. That's kind of sad. And Fossilized Helix also being below baseline for Ironclad. Maybe that's true proof that Ironclad really wants to take damage. If you prevent yourself from taking damage, you're more likely to lose on Ironclad. At least I was. That's funny. Niao's Lament being below baseline is a little sad. I picked it 15 times. We must have won 9 of those times. Dead Branch, not as high up as you'd expect on Ironclad. It's far below Gambling Chip and the Captain's Wheel and the Pocket Watch as far as rare relics go. In fact, I think we'll see Pocket Watch continually one of the top contenders. Meanwhile, the highest performing relics that we got a lot are the simple draw relics, the Bag of Preparation and the Centennial Puzzle. We're both taking a lot and were very useful. Potion Belt also pretty good. Highest performing common relic seems to be the Akabeko of all things. How cool is that? At least on Ironclad, for that initial additional damage. Also quite surprised to see Juzu Bracelet so high. Alright, so what about relics on the Silent? I think we can really kind of truly get an idea of the highest quality relics by looking at them across all 4 characters. So for Silent, do we see a different performance for different relics? Let's take a look here. For the Silent, had very high performance for Lizard Tail and Pocket Watch. Never lost a run with those. Also 100% win rate, Mark of the Bloom. Very cool. The highest pick and wins were, again, Centennial Puzzle, Bag of Prep, in this case, Kunai. Kunai was not visible on Ironclad, but stands out here. Again, seeing high performance for the Pyramid, the Coffee Dripper, the Akabeko, the Potion Belt, the Pandora's Box, the Incense Burner, the Gambling Chip, the Paper Crane. Really good performance from Frozen Eye. Actually, better performance from Dead Branch on Silent than on Ironclad. Now, that's interesting. I don't know what to make of that. Really. And Necronomicon, too. Necronomicon was pretty few takes, but seeing Dead Branch so much higher for Silent than Ironclad is very interesting. Note the green line in the middle indicating the base win rate for Silent, which is lower than the base for Ironclad. If I go back, you can see Ironclad at a higher win rate than Silent. And so the average relic height should be lower on this page. Meanwhile, at the very bottom left there, I didn't even see it. Busted Crown never got a win. So 100% win rate, Busted Crown Ironclad, 0% win rate, Busted Crown Silent. Also 0% win rate, Hand Drill Silent. What does it mean? It means the sample size was small. That's what it means. Okay, Defect. What do you got, Defect? Defect saw very high success for the Old Coin and the Dolly's Mirror. Very high performance for Fossilized Helix. Very high performance for Prismatic Shard. Oh, it's proved. We have actual data. Prismatic Shard is best on Defect. I was wondering. I think that's proof. Bag of Prep just like way up there. Look at Bag of Prep all the way on the side. Bag of Prep confirmed insane. No, Centennial Puzzle confirmed insane. I'm taking the Centennial Puzzle left, but the data shows the Centennial Puzzle is doing better than the Bag of Prep is. So Centennial Puzzle is the relic to really keep your eye out for. Unsurprising, I think, to see Mummy Hand do so well. Pyramid was actually not as high performing as some of the other boss relics like Coffee Dripper and Empty Cage did really well, although we picked it a lot less. Empty Cage did much better than Pyramid on average, as did Fusion Hammer. Funny how that works. Things that were really bad on the Defect include the Necronomicon, the Velvet Choker, which I think was low on every character, and Niao's Lament again. Statistically, Niao's Lament does not work out for us. More relic agnostic, I like that. Is reading bad for you? Well, taking 21 damage is bad. That might be what that points to. But if I look for the other book relics, Enchiridion and Nilri's should be higher up, around the same rarity. Nilri's is right on top of Busted Crown there at the baseline. What about the Enchiridion? Can I find it? Oh, it's at 100%. Yeah, all right. Well, Nilri's Enchiridion clearly the best one, based on the Defect data here. Lastly, Watcher. Look at how much higher all the relics are for Watcher. With Serpent Head being the only relic with a 0% win rate. Again, topping the charts with Ectoplasm, Velvet Choker also undefeated, Snecko-Eye undefeated, Necronomicon undefeated, Cloak Clasp undefeated, and most importantly of all, Stone Calendar undefeated on the Watcher. Here we do see a very, very high performance for the Runic Pyramid boss relic. Also very high performance for Black Star. That makes sense on Watcher. She can handle the elites more easily. And just kind of a broadly higher performance for rare relics in general, with a few exceptions. Incense Burner below par. That's weird. Very surprised to see Incense Burner low. Toxic Egg also below par. Huh. Not sure what to make of that. But overall, I like seeing these relic win rates because these, to me, point to relics that I was really undervaluing. And let's take a look at, specifically, when it comes to trying to assess the quality of a relic in general, we can look at the combined win rate across all four characters, which is right here. So here's, across all four characters, which relics showed the most consistent success. The only ones with 100% win rate on this page are class exclusive ones, again showing the lower sample size, creating a distortion here. But looking at this, again, Centennial Puzzle performing on average better than Bag of Prep, with Centennial, Bag of Prep, Anchor, and Lantern all being top performers common relic-wise. Also high performance out of the Meal Ticket, as far as common relics go. And then, of course, lots of the shop relics that we buy a lot are top performers, too. Anything else that really stands out here is something that I'm not used to taking a lot. We also saw a good performance this year for, I believe, the Ancient Tea Set, which I'm having a hard time spotting here. Another thing that stands out to me is the visible difference between the Defect baseline and the Cracked Core. That's a fun one. Defect that didn't boss swap had a noticeably lower win rate on this graph. That's kind of cool. T-set right in the middle there. Oh, yes, it is. Right under Meat on the Bone. So, performed pretty well. About equal to the Watcher average. About equal to Bag of Preparation. But was taken a lot less often. So, to me, these relics overall speak to a very consistent bias towards relics that do something on turn 1. Lantern, Bag of Preparation, Anchor. Or relics that give you block or card draw, especially. High performance for Tungsten Rod. All 3 boat relics are very high performing. Tough Bandages are very high performing. Ink Bottle is very high performing. These seem to be the things that we really value in relics, and I think that's because they're harder to get from cards. That's kind of how I value my cards in other games like Monster Train, too, is how easily can I duplicate this effect with other stuff. This is going to be on YouTube. Oh, yeah, definitely. That's what it's for. All right, when we're almost done here, Couple last things to look at. We looked at relics. We looked at cards for each character. What about Niao bonuses? For my first choice for the first decision of the run, how did that work out for us? I've got this interesting little chart here. I believe this one is by Faley. Of our Niao win rate kind of as a matrix here. Upside, and then... So all of the no downside boons are on the far left, and then the remaining 4 columns are the downside boons with their upside and downside kind of splayed out in a matrix. So, for example, this shows me that we had a very high success rate when we picked random rare relic, as long as that random rare relic was exchanged for 10% of our max health or for 99 gold. If I gained a curse or took damage for the rare relic, we had a very low success rate. That's kind of interesting. Likewise, remove 2 cards. Very successful when I lost health or took damage, but very unsuccessful when I lost my money. I think because the remove 2 then prevents you, if you lose gold while getting the remove 2, you can't get the third remove in a shop. That's kind of interesting. Very high success rate when I just simply chose to upgrade a card. I think that's probably because I took upgrade a card disproportionately on Watcher. That's my guess. Pretty good success rate with random rare. Very good success rate with 250 gold no matter what downside it was paired with. Meanwhile, some of our worst boons were the small max health gain, the 3 random potion gain, and lose gold for choose a rare colorless wasn't very good either. I'd say choose a rare colorless, gain a curse being 100% is probably an outlier. I think we only did that 1 or 2 times. Didn't see that a lot. But actually, I really like this. I would not have guessed that the remove 2 card start and random rare relic start were so different in their success rate based on which penalty they were paired with. I actually really like looking at these. Huh. Very, very curious. And then the scale on the right is just the color scale. So, last thing I wanted to look at was card masteries. I got asked the question a couple of times. Since we're doing this Slay the Spire Mastery Challenge in 2023, what would have happened if I'd started our current challenge a year earlier, where my goal is to win Slay the Spire with 2 copies of every card in the game? And if we'd started tracking this challenge last year, according to our run history files, we would not be even close to done with the challenge, mastering 253 out of 352 cards. And here they are by character. I'm going to go through this kind of quickly. On Ironclad, notable ones we never had 2 copies of: Anger, Brutality, Wild Strike, Immolate, Metallicize, or Rampage, just to name a few. Most of the others were done in duplicate at some point. On Silent, we got, I think, the most cards in duplicate. Ones we didn't get, notably Bane, Storm of Steel, Terror, of course. You don't really need 2 Terrors. Die, Flying Knee, Distraction, Masterful Stab, to name a few. On Defect, we had 61 done. Never got 2 Amplifies, 2 Multicasts. No double Rainbow build either. No double Self-Repair, no double Static Discharge, even though it was one of the highest performing cards on Defect. I only ever had 1 copy. And no double Hello World. Although I think a couple times we had 2 Hello Worlds and then removed 1. That's my guess. We did get 2 Neutralizes. I think there was a Match and Keep incident. It also looks like we did get Zap. Yeah, we did have double Zap at some point. On Watcher, we had the fewest masteries of all, which makes sense. I think our deck size on Watcher was smaller on average, so there's less cards we would have had 2 copies of. No double Bowling Bash, no double Brilliance. Surprising to see no double Carve Reality. No double Flurry of Blows. Cards like Master Reality and Signature Move are unsurprising to never have 2 copies of. But weird to not have double Spirit Shield or double Wave of the Hand at any point. But yeah, no double Flurries, I think, exhibits my personal preference for not having Flurries. And for full completion here, the Colorless and Curses, we barely got any of these. We did master Ascender's Bane and Injury, again, that aforementioned Watcher run, but all the other curses were unmastered. Most of the colorless cards we did not get, but we did get Ritual Dagger, the Bomb, Panache, Hand of Greed, and Chrysalis for some of the tougher ones. That's funny. That's funny. So those are the numbers on our 2022 Slay the Spire challenge. I want to kind of subjectively, in addition to the numeric analysis we just did, I want to briefly summarize my thoughts on each of the 4 characters and how I feel about them, and how I performed in 2022. Starting with Ironclad. Ironclad, I feel like we had a really good grasp on this year. I've started to avoid certain cards entirely, like Wild Strike and Clothesline under most circumstances, and a few of the other early game awkward damage cards like Fire Breathing. And I really consider Ironclad these days to be more about surviving until you can figure out some kind of overpowered build to put together. And much of the time that's Corruption plus Dark Embrace plus some other stuff like Body Slam, but it can also be Barricade and a couple of Entrenches. It can be 2 drop kicks and a bunch of exhaust stuff. It can be Demon Form and Reaper together. Or it can involve some of your relics. But in most cases, Ironclad to me seems to be about trying to stay alive while collecting resource and relics and cards until you achieve some kind of snowball combo, at which point you're able to tackle the rest of the game. I rarely find that we win Ironclad runs via incremental slow advantage. Those runs just tend to fall apart if they reach the end game gauntlet, the Time Eater, the Awakened one, and we're still trying to operate with a bunch of common cards and powers that have to be played in a particular order. It just never works out. But the wacky Dead Branch Corruption, stupid nonsense 200 health Ironclad runs are perfect. And I think I'm doing a good job of figuring out which combo pieces to pick early. We're seeing a lot of early Dark Embrace picks, a lot of early Feel No Pain picks that are leading to a lot of successes with the Clad. Overall, very, very happy with this character. Second character, Silent. Silent, I feel like we have room for improvement on. Over this year of play, I feel like I've come to really respect the need for more card draw on this character. The 2 additional cards in the starting deck, 2 more, 5 strikes, 5 defends, neutralize, survivor. 2 more cards than any other character has. And that means that the Silent really ends up valuing any card draw effect, specifically acrobatics and backflip, but also upgraded prepared works pretty well. Calculated gambles are great also. It really does seem like a run needs some of these in order to have the consistency it wants to be successful. To that end, removing strikes is also very important, but I've found this year that removing strikes too aggressively too early leads to early catastrophe on Silent. So the early game of Silent is a delicate balance where you have to grab enough damage early on to start answering the Act 1 and Act 2 threats, while at the same time not bloating your deck so much that you fall apart in the end game as you pick up card draw. It's tough to do, and I'm still figuring it out, but I think we're getting a lot better at it. And I think overall that Silent-wise, we have improved quite a bit from before. I don't think in 2021 we were at 50% for A20 Silent, so although we have a lot of improvement to make on this character, I think we've still done quite well. The thing it seems like I could improve most is still my Act 1 Silent. Just simply taking one's time and doing a little bit of calculation in early combats can save you critical health that can be important for getting through Act 1. And I think I might need to do this a little bit more on the Silent specifically in order to avoid losing to Act 1 Elites or the Act 1 boss. Overall, my opinion on Poison has come down a bit this year for Silent, and my opinion on doing damage with direct attack stuff has gone up. Pretty happy with Silent this year. Defect was a bit of a challenge. Defect saw a lot of defeats this year, one of our worst performing characters. Still trying to figure out the balance on Defect. What I think we did well was incorporate some of Defect's alternate win conditions. We saw a really high success rate with Meteor Strike and Reprogram this year when I did take them, which is not often. They tended to do quite well. And I think that's something I'm starting to recognize better is of the 1,000 different directions you can take a Defect deck, which one do you go on the particular run that you're on? And the more that I do that, the more of a feel I get. Also feeling more and more like Claw is unfortunately not Law. It really does seem to be quite a poor performer whenever I try to incorporate it. Just not enough immediate damage. Meanwhile, Defect has lots of other better ways to scale the other zero-cost cards, like Beam Cell and Go for the Eyes. Focus is something that is still an important mechanic for the Defect. How dare you? I know. With Defragment, again, being one of the early cards that is quite important. If you see it, you should take it, because it gets such a core piece of the deck. But because Focus is not offered consistently, you really have to be able to find those other outs and take them. Other thing I saw from the data is that maybe I should consider not upgrading Streamline and Sunder so much early in the game. Perhaps try to upgrade a different kind of card rather than upgrading my damage cards first. What if I go for power or defend upgrades early and fight less or no early elites to try to make up for that? I don't know if that would work, but that's something to consider strategy-wise. I think more and more Defect could benefit from taking fewer elites. We did see especially Defect struggling in the elites of Act 2 by the numbers, and that's a big sign to me that taking fewer elites on the Defect might be able to get more done. Fewer elites might also mean more upgrades, which can be very important for the robot character, because you're taking less damage. So that's how I feel about Defect. When it comes to boss swapping, we still do have a vaguely positive performance from boss swaps on Defect. I'm actually curious to do swaps more on Ironclad based on the success we saw in 2022. Going back to Ironclad for a moment, talking about boss swaps. I think I'll do more boss swaps on Ironclad in the future. Definitely going to do more. Lastly, the Watcher. I feel like we really honed in on some of the most consistently effective strategies on Watcher. There were still plenty of losses on Watcher, which to me speaks to a need to rein in some of the more creative card picks at times that I'm making. Although our current challenge will force me to keep doing that. But also, there were a number of deaths on Watcher this year that were entirely preventable. I'd say Watcher, more than any other character, died to misplaying combats, speaking to just how challenging it is to play her cards correctly. And just like Silent, taking a little bit more time and consideration in my combats for Watcher, more specifically late-game bosses and mid-game elites, rather than the early-game elites like it is for Silent, that need more focus for that character. So I can really make sure I'm getting every point of damage that I can. 5 damage against the Book of Stabbing in Act 2 can make all the difference, for example, on the Watcher. Yeah, Watcher deaths are very order. Whoops. I do expect that the current challenge will reduce our win rate substantially. I bet we'd be below 50% for 2023, because I'm going to be trying to get duplicate copies of weird rare cards, where you normally shouldn't do that. But I still think we'll have a pretty good success rate overall with the fundamentals that we've learned. So those are my thoughts across the 4 characters. Overall, I feel like constantly playing Slay the Spire throughout the year, we never really took a very long break, was really helpful for my gameplay overall. I definitely feel like I improved very significantly over the course of the year. And we did see a slight win rate increase from the first 200 wins to the second 200 wins as well. Again, this 400 win challenge did include a 20-win streak that was and still is the current record for most consecutive Ascension 20 Heart victories when changing characters. The A20 Rotating Heart record, it's called. I definitely played that streak a lot differently than I played other portions of this year. That win streak did take a lot of focus from me. I found it very important to show up at the start of stream, refreshed, mentally ready to tackle a difficult challenge. And I made sure to take my time and consider things. There was a lot of social and emotional pressure on myself and the stream during these runs that really added an extra layer of tenseness. And I really had to bring myself to rise to the occasion, to not panic and freak out. That 3,000 people were watching me play a run to Slay the Spire, and I didn't know what to do at that moment. Sometimes there's 1,000 different suggestions flying on in Twitch chat. 90% of them are not the optimal line, because sometimes there's a lot of interactions going on. It can be really difficult to spot. And it can be really difficult to figure out which of those suggestions is actually helpful in that situation. So it can be really, really, really overwhelming. Anybody who's been on a high win streak in Slay the Spire, especially one who's streamed it, can attest to that. It's quite something. I don't know if we'll end up with another long win streak like that in the future. It really did require a specific mindset, something that I'm not always able to bring. Something that's, you know, when you're bringing your A game isn't something you can do every single day. But the win streak is kind of a question of how consistently can you bring the A game. But for me, this whole year, in retrospect, it's not about how well I did at my best, but rather what is the whole picture? How did my average do across the year? And with that, to that question, I have a very satisfying answer, which is that the more I play Slay the Spire, the better I get. Even as I vary my strategies and try new things and find new ways to lose, I'm always improving through it all, gradually mastering the game more and more. So if you're at home wondering, you know, what can I do to do better at Slay the Spire? How is it that I at home cannot recreate what I see on the stream or in the YouTube videos all the time? And the answer is practice, practice, practice. You just got to play more runs, because this game, it truly is one of nearly infinite depth. So those are my thoughts. That's the year of 2022 in retrospective. This ended up being heckin' long, so thank you if you've made it all the way through this very, very long video. Special thanks to Ori, Zanzan, Ryan at foxrow.com, Andy Cotgreave, and Faley, everyone who contributed the analysis, the images, the graphs, the data, or the background to put this together. Thank you, everybody, for helping me put this together. Also, a special shout out to the Slay the Spire Discord and their data analysis channel for being full of very cool people who are interested in picking apart the numbers, the data of runs of Slay the Spire. And thank you all, viewers at home, for watching, for being a part of this awesome community. I hope you learned something. I certainly did from the last year of Slay the Spire. If you like this video, please drop me a like below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more crazy content like this. There is a whole new year of Slay the Spire content coming, so there will definitely be more runs banking on the knowledge we've learned from 2022. Thank you.